When lawyers think their area is bespoke, it's the nuances that are bespoke. Legal engineering is not just about the innovation and trying brand new stuff. A lot of the books I read and a lot of things I like are about marginal gains and continuous improvement. So a little bit here, a little bit there. It could be as simple as, do you have a single seller or multiple sellers? No one went to law school to put an S at the end of the word seller and change grammar from has to have. That's what automation can do for you. And you can then put in your nuanced bespoke details if you need.
On today's Legally Speaking podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Catherine Bamford. Catherine is the CEO and founder of BamLegal. She has over 15 years of experience working with the world's leading law firms to help them implement document automation. As a legal engineer, Catherine has automated hundreds of documents whilst building due diligence platforms and contract review tools. She has been named the Financial Times Top 10 Legal Technologist, European Women in Law Tech winner, and is a Woman of Legal Tech honoree. So, a very big warm welcome to the show, Catherine.
Thank you, Rob. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we're so happy to finally have you. We're speaking off mic. I know it's taken a while for us to make this happen. But before we get into all your amazing work and things you've been getting up to over the past years, we do have a customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking podcast, which is, on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, what would you rate the hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality of the law if you've seen it?
So I'm sorry, I'm one of those people that have never watched it. I don't really watch much television at all. My legal intro was more Ally McBeal back in those days, which wasn't realistic at all. But yeah, 0 for Suits, I'm afraid.
And we'll move swiftly on. And so let's start with then, Catherine, a bit about your background and career journey. Tell all our listeners a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I started off actually even before university. So don't want to make this too long a story, but something that some people don't realize is I actually quit school at 17. So didn't get A levels, didn't finish school, and was wanting to go and maybe do some grape picking in France or just go traveling or something like that. But my mum said, well, you can quit school. We know you're not happy there, but you probably should stay in education. So I went and did a GMVQ at a college in England. I left home. I was in Northern Ireland, left home, went and did that. And I did a business GMVQ, and within that was a really tiny law module, like 6 weeks or something like that, of like an hour a week. And I loved it. And, they say it just takes that one teacher to inspire you. Well, the guy that ran that 6-week module really inspired me. And I thought, right, without A levels, with just a GMVQ, is there any chance I could ever become a lawyer? Probably not, but I'll do everything I possibly can to try.
Yep.
So that was before, this is how it's showing my age, but that was before, kind of the days you could look everyone up on websites and email everyone. So I got the yellow pages and I wrote to every law firm in a kind of 30-mile radius saying, please give me some work experience. And Freeth Cartwright gave me some work experience. And that was my first ever introduction to law. And then I managed to find some universities that were taking people without A levels and like kind of giving the equivalent by having it was like an advanced GMVQ. So I think it was the equivalent of like 2.5 A levels, something like that. So I got to Brunel. And then what I thought was, well, if I'm going to be up against people at top universities and they get a 2-1 and I get a 2-1 from Brunel, which is a good university, but it's not, seen for law as one of the top ones, what would make a difference? And I thought work experience would make a difference. So I chose a longer degree that had work experience in the middle. So it was a 4-year degree, but with a year's work experience at 2 firms. So I did lots of really good work experience within 2 different law firms. And they offered me training contracts. So I never had to go through that whole pain of trying to find one because the ones I did work experience gave me them. Eventually qualified Pinsent Masons, and I was a real estate finance lawyer.
Let's pick up from there then. Obviously, you're a lawyer at Pinsons, then obviously moved to Director of Legal Engineering at Deloitte Legal, I believe. But what prompted your transition from lawyer to legal engineer?
When I first started, I was loving being a lawyer, really enjoyed the teamwork, the learning, the meeting the clients, the events. It was all really good fun. But maybe I chose the wrong area of law, I don't know. After a few years, you were doing the same thing over and over again. So I was doing commercial real estate. So I was doing leases, licenses, rent deposit deeds. And I just wasn't satisfied. It wasn't fulfilling me. And I was looking at the partners and thinking, I don't want their life. So if I do this for, that was always the goal, qualify and then make partner. But then I was looking at the partners and thinking, so basically I have to keep doing what I'm doing now for about 20 or 30, maybe longer years. And then I might make partner if I'm lucky. And I was looking at them and going, their life doesn't look that much fun. So also at that time, the recession then hit. And Pinsents were brilliant in that a lot of law firms made redundancies because the recession really hit hard. What they did was more like the KPMG model, where they put everyone on a 20% pay cut, but
Hmm.
everyone went down to 4 days a week. So they tried to save lots of jobs, but went to that, except for a few of us that were put on internal secondments to try and make the law firm more efficient because clients were asking for more for less. So I
Yeah.
was chosen to look at my team and how technology could help make it more efficient. And they had just bought in some document automation software, and I got my hands on that. It was meant to be a 3-month secondment.
Yeah.
And 15 years later, here I am. I just never went back. So that was my first experience with legal tech. And I just thought there's something to this. And back then, 15 odd years ago, you couldn't Google legal tech and find the vast amounts of information you could do previously. There wasn't even the job title. So we made up the job title legal engineer because we didn't know what, when I started hiring for the team, because it actually went pretty well. They were like, oh, there's something to this. We didn't know what to advertise for. So we called them legal knowledge engineers. So that was how it was. It was the recession, and I guess the combination of I was ready to stop fee earning anyway. So I approached the firm at the end of the secondment and I said, look, I think there's something to this. Could I do this firm wide?
I love that. And so let's move forwards then to July 2014, I believe, because you founded then BamLegal, a trusted consultancy specializing in document automation. So can you tell us more about what BamLegal is, please?
Yeah, sure. So it's a legal technology consultancy for law firms, in-house teams, and also more and more these days like alternative legal service providers. So we work for most of the large ALSPs, and we help those organizations to choose what technology to buy to solve their particular use cases, saving them having to go and see like demos of 200 different tools and then be chased by the sales teams of 200
Yeah.
different vendors. We take them through like the kind of the product procurement process of workshops, narrow down to your top 3, RFPs, pilots, implementations, change management, all that kind of thing. So either where they don't have resource themselves or their resource is extremely busy and they want just expertise pinpoint on particular niches. So it started off with Doc Auto. Now it's a bit of everything. It could be like third-party contract review. This morning I was asked about using generative AI and deterministic tools to extract the information and then automatically draft the document. So without the human even in the middle filling out the questionnaire. So it's very varied as to what we do. But yeah, it's legal technology advisors, if you like.
Yeah, and it's fabulous, and I've been following your journey for many many years, and we've got lots of mutual friends in and around the world of legal tech, which now very much is a phrase or whatever you want to call it. I guess you touched on it before with the transition, but I'm keen just to get the inspiration because I'm a big believer in like mission led companies are the ones of the future. But what inspired you to found BAM Legal?
So there's the sensible, logical answer,
Yeah,
which was I've been doing what I was doing for Pinsent Masons for about 4 years, and it was going quite well. They won some awards, and other law firms started tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Will you come and do what you've done there for us?"
yeah,
So I was getting quite a lot of job offers, and I thought there's enough job offers here to set up a consultancy. The story I don't share often, and maybe because I've not made it a reality, and that's maybe going to come in the next version of BAM, was I was actually in India over Christmas and thinking, why would I do this? What would be the mission? What would be the purpose? And I've always had a belief that a lot of what I do and I've learned and the connections I've made through doing what I do in the corporate sector could be applied to help with access to justice. So the goal was always learn, connect, grow, um, as much as I possibly could. And so in between, I've done a lot of like access to justice events, some pro bono advisory. And I used to actually just volunteer at the RCJ for support through court to just see what the problems were. Because, yeah, I strongly believe that technology can do an awful lot to improve access to justice. So that was always the sort of, it was to improve the delivery of legal services for all was the
Yeah.
kind of mission.
And I think that's fantastic. And, we fully support tech for good and particularly access to justice. Obviously, we partner with Clio on the show. They have a vision and mission to obviously transform the legal experience for all. And we're all for that. And I think everyone coming together doing this great work, I think we absolutely can reduce that huge access to justice gap that exists. So, thank you for the great work you're doing. You touched on it before, but I want to go a little bit deeper just to educate our listeners on this around the services BAM Legal offers, because it's legal service transformation, legal document automation, contract standardization, playbooks.
These are all hard words to say, aren't they?
Strategic advisory events and workshops. So I guess for, again, folks that might be new to dipping their toe into purchasing or thinking about legal tech, just break a few of those down and go into a bit more detail.
Yeah. So the kind of if it's a law firm that's kind of as you say, dipping their toe in or just wondering where to start, often we'll do like workshop days with the board, or they can bring in a group of lawyers or a particular department to kind of brainstorm use cases, educate about different technology out there. What's the different technologies that work for different type of tasks, whether we're talking drafting, negotiating, workflow, anything it may be. So that's the kind of workshop side of things. And then the full other side of it is, at the moment we have like a large global law firm that we're talking to who have a huge innovation team, have lots and lots and lots of legal technology products, but have reached a bit of a plateau, and they'd like us to come in and just review the whole thing and maybe assess where things could be changed, because they feel, and this is the case with a lot of large organizations at the moment, who have invested in legal tech over the years and resource, is that they've almost become technology led. So what's happening now is they've bought a load of technology and there's people going round the law firm going, can you use this? Can you use this?
Yeah.
Rather than it being problem use case first and then the technology to solve it type thing. So it's almost like have the technology and then are scrambling to get the use cases.
Yeah, thank you for giving such clear examples for that. And I guess coming to you for some perhaps careers advice now. You've made the transition from lawyer to legal tech entrepreneur. I'm sure there'll be people listening to this that might be thinking to how you were way back then. But let's be real. What was the biggest challenge in making that transition from lawyer to legal tech entrepreneur? And I appreciate it was a while back now. So what would you say perhaps for people looking forwards in sort of 2025? Because I appreciate it's different times.
So the biggest challenge for me then was how I was going to pay my rent the next month.
Yeah.
Because I was going to lose my salary and I wasn't going to be able to invoice until 30 days post. So I was extremely lucky that there was a senior associate in the law firm I was leaving that I mentioned this to when they said, oh, well done for you for going to set up your own business and good for you. And she wasn't a close friend or anything like that. But she just said to me, well, I'll lend you £500.
Aww.
And that was it. And, I was like, well, as soon as I get paid my first invoice, I'll pay you back. And so I've always believed in kind of like paying that forward. I'll never forget that gesture of someone believing in you and trusting in you to just help you make that step. Making the transformation, the biggest thing to do is kind of make sure you have a plan for that roadway, if you like. Is it called roadway? Where you
runway,
have
roadway,
runway, that's it, runway. So you have like your first couple of clients or your set amount of money that will keep you going till you get things rolling. Because that's the scariest time, is that beginning stage. Network like anything from before you even thought you have a business idea. All the kind, I was speaking to some law students on Friday at Anglia Ruskin University and saying to them, on LinkedIn now, connect with all of each other, because in 10 years' time, that's your network already. You're all going to be working in lots of different law firms and legal businesses. So my advice to people now would be network, build it up, so that when you do launch your business, you've got lots of people that will be happily supporting you get the word out there.
Oh, you're talking my language there, Catherine. Lots of things that people have been listening to the show since day dot or watch me talk. I always talk about NSN, never stop networking, and work warm. And you gave a great example of networking warm there with your existing cohorts, because they'll inevitably go off and build their network. So it's not just that individuals, it's a network of a network you'll then acquire. And yeah, all of that great stuff. So really good advice. All right, let's go more into automation now. Something a thing or two about. But was there a pivotal moment in your career, or just sort of looking up, where you felt that the legal industry really does need better automation?
I think from that day one, for me, it was so obvious.
Yep.
Because I was doing real estate for like large investors and pension funds and that kind of thing. So they would own shopping centres, office blocks, where they would have multiple tenants within, and the law firm would manage that asset for them. So every time we did a lease for that shopping centre, there was a lot of the same information that would go in. And the tenant nearly always would pay a rent deposit. So the lawyers would have to draft one of those as well. Then there was also these other documents like notices and stat decks. So every time you did a deal, you had to do about 6 documents, draft 6 documents at once. And you were putting the same information manually into those, in like even just we think the party names, yeah. So for me, as soon as I saw automation and understood how it worked, where you put the information in once and it prepares the first draft of all of the documents ready for you, it would just be, it was kind of, I use the example of like, no one questions accountants using Excel. A lot of what lawyers do is drafting. So why are people even questioning using very simple tools like this to do it for them? So for me, that was kind of obvious with the automation. And then probably the biggest, like the bit where I started to be almost like recognized as, oh, she's quite good at this, or, she knows what she's doing, is when we started to use it for things that it hadn't been used for before. So with Pinsent Masons famously, and I can talk about this because they've talked about it publicly, it was called Project Rock, and it was where over Christmas there was thousands and thousands property reports to be doing for a real estate finance deal. So it was after the recession, it was when all the Irish banks were selling off their debts to some funds, and Pinsent's won millions and millions of pounds worth of work from some magic circle firms because they automated the process of doing it. And that was something that through the night I kind of built with a couple of banking and real estate finance partners. And yeah, that just kind of like took off, and in the firm got the recognition because I think it was like one of the biggest deals, that had been done that year and that kind of thing. And then everyone started going, how could we use it? And that was when suddenly law firms started realizing when we go to pitches, when we answer RFPs, we want to be saying how we deliver it using technology to be faster, smarter, not even necessarily cheaper, but just if you can do it in a week and someone else saying it's going to take them 4 weeks, that's of interest. So that was one of the big ones that I kind of guess I got some recognition for, if you like, as to what I could do.
And that's huge, right? And I think, just thinking back to generally any business, I think whenever you've got a product or service, it's meeting clients where they're at and understanding the benefit to them. And like you say, it doesn't, whenever you're thinking about selling, it's time, quality, or cost. So it's not all those 3 variables. So, like you said, it's not necessarily being the cheapest, it's actually the quality and the time and the delivery there. You can sell the benefit to them. I love that. Okay, let's talk about, a bit of pessimism. Let's talk about a bit of sort of misconceptions when it comes to automation. What are the biggest ones you hear from lawyers around sort of document automation when it comes to just a wrong misconception?
So there's still to this day certain lawyers and certain law firms that question why they would want to do things faster when they charge by the hour, which surprises me, but it still happens. Yep. So that's the biggest one that unfortunately there's still firms that think in that way, mainly more in the States now than in Europe, because they still do, in some places in the States still do get to charge what's on the clock. But then when it comes to automation itself, I think the most common one is my area of work is too bespoke and you can't automate what I do. So of course you could do real estate or employment contracts or NDAs, but what I draft every day is so complicated, you couldn't automate that. I've never in my 15 years come across a document that couldn't, the drafting of which could not be sped up in some way or improved in some way. Because it's not always about the speed, as you just said, Rob. It can sometimes be improving the quality of the product, consistency, reducing risk. So I've never found an area yet. It could be that you work in, I think I said the other day, an example of you could work in space law, but you're still going to have parties. You're going to have the logistics of the rocket. You're going to have, whatever it might be. You're selling moon rocks. There's still going to be a price. There's going to be, what happens if there's a dispute and you're not happy with it. You're going to have insurance. You're going to have really complicated jurisdiction clauses, but you could automate all of those and go, is the jurisdiction Mars or Pluto? Whatever it may be. And it'll pull in the right clauses and the right definitions. Sorry, a bit of an extreme example there, but just when lawyers think their area is bespoke, it's the nuances that are bespoke, the heavy lifting of the drafting. And it could be as simple as, do you have a single seller or multiple sellers? No one went to law school to put an S at the end of the word seller and change grammar from has to have. That's what automation can do for you. And you can then put in your nuanced bespoke details if you need.
Today's episode is brought to you by Clio, leaders in legal tech and the team behind one of the most exciting AI launches this summer. Clio Duo is arriving this summer and it's already creating a stir. Built right into Clio Manage, Duo uses AI to help you draft emails, capture time, summarize documents automatically. It's smart, seamless, and designed to save you hours every week. Find out more and see what Clio Duo can do for your firm at clio.com/UK. Now back to the show. Just to sort of build on the point around, we're not going to debate the billable hour, but I definitely see a future of sort of value-based pricing and tiered pricing and that future. And Sean Jardine, who's been on the show, who ran, a very successful law firm many, many moons ago, talks a lot about this and gives a very simple example of, if you have toothache, would you be happy to pay less and wait to get relief of that? Or would you be happy to pay more to get the same quality of service, but faster? And I think if you can kind of educate your clients and put it into that mindset, then it's not necessarily a race to the bottom when it comes to the advent of including a lot of legal technology.
Yeah, not at all. And going back to that example that I said about working with like investors and pension funds, each day that goes by, so say it's real estate, if they have an empty unit that doesn't have a tenant in paying rent, each day that goes on before they've completed that lease is devaluing the value of their portfolio because they don't have the income of those assets coming in. So the faster you do it, the actual more money you're making your client. So that's, or it could be onboarding an employee. It could be getting that, for in-house teams, getting that contract in place to allow you to do that service. The amount of, I think it was the IACC or the World Contracting Commerce, I'm terrible with acronyms, but it was one of them that looked at it, and something like 9 billion is like, the gap of that, the delay time, if you like, in getting contracts signed.
Yeah, again, another really good example, and thanks for sharing that, because I think framing things where people can really get on board with it will hopefully help education, but also adoption as well, because, we are in this stage of 2025 where, it's no longer a nice to have, and I know we're talking off air about that as well. We haven't mentioned the word AI yet, and we're well into a podcast, so I guess we're going to have to. So how do you, and obviously we can timestamp this because things are literally changing by the minute, the hour, and the day. But how do you see genuinely AI and automation reshaping the role of lawyers in the coming years?
Yeah, I think a lot. I do actually. It's such an exciting time, and I've been on the kind of change journey where I was initially skeptical, then I was a little bit fearful and everything else. But now I'm definitely on the excited time and the experimenting time. Whereas document automation, as one example, is a way to use technology to do one task. So draft the document with the lawyer filling in the client details and matter information. What I'm starting to help organizations with now, and particularly I'm actually working a lot with the vendors now, they're getting me in to experiment with deterministic logic and AI, is where can we combine the two? So the other day I was working with 2 vendors who are looking at partnering on using generative AI to extract information from the client's instructions, whether that be an email, a heads of terms, both, put them both in. Could be the transcription of a Teams meeting where you interviewed the client, whatever it may be. You take those, extract the information, and then use deterministic logic to draft the document. Then we're working with clients on third-party contract review, so using playbooks to negotiate. So a lot of the tasks that previously were taking lawyers hours of time can now be done in minutes, or even some things are being done automatically. We've worked with one organization recently where from a Teams meeting that happens every month, they're automatically getting minutes produced, board minutes at the end of it. So no one's having to go on and do that as a task after, using things like transcription and automation. So I think the hours of what lawyers do, if we break it into tasks of what lawyers do, is being sped up immensely, and the lawyer's role of the future will be a lot more about service delivery and project management, winning work, business development, as opposed to the heavy lifting of manual drafting of a document.
I agree. I'm going to push you a bit further. AI replacing lawyers. There's been a lot of commotion regarding that, and will continue to be, I'm sure. But what are your thoughts about the statement that AI will replace lawyers? Will it happen? Is it currently happening? Yeah, tell us.
I think it will replace the current ways that lawyers deliver tasks.
Yep.
I don't think it will reduce the number of lawyers like some people predict, but I just think that because the more it seems to be, the more technology and the more advances, the more legal things there is to think about, So I'm not sure it'll reduce the number of lawyers necessarily, but I do think that the role of a lawyer will be very different, and there'll probably be different job titles. Just like 10 years ago, we saw job titles like legal technologist, legal engineer. I think if we were to look at a service industry now, a technology business that delivered a service, it's more what are the job functions within that service business, and then which bits the lawyers do. I think it will look very, very different, but I don't think the numbers will be reduced.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great way of looking at it. And, Goldman Sachs, I think, released a report saying, 60% of jobs didn't exist 80 years ago. So you just think of a simple example. Social media wasn't around 80 years ago. Social media managers, that's just a simple example to use. But, roles inevitably are going to be reshaped and reformed. If we're not getting more efficient, if we're not getting faster, if we're not kind of innovating, then there might be a slight concern. Okay, let's go back to content now, actually, regarding automation, because you put a lot of good content out there. You've also, produced some good articles. And in one of your articles, you state which legal documents to automate. So the answer depends on a number of things, such as the main practice areas of the firms, areas operating on fixed fees, or needs to improve margin/profitability, the experience level of their automator, and the senior level of support. So can you share with us why these factors specifically are important to consider when it comes to document automation from your experience?
So starting where you have fixed fee work just makes the implementation, the change management a lot easier within a law firm. And then you can show, you can use like actual data points of how much you've improved profitability to show the rest of the law firm why they should consider using this. I think, what were some of the other things? Give me some of those. Sorry.
Needs to improve their profitability or margins.
Yeah,
and
so
then
the reason I talk about that one as opposed to is because strategy-wise, when we say to people, what is it you want to do with legal technology, we also always start with, the famous Simon Sinek, always start with why. And it's the reason we do that is because sometimes it's they want to grow a new area and win more clients. So actually they want to have a really amazing way of delivering that service so they can go and win more clients. But for some areas, it's like we need to improve profitability because we know what's market. We quote market. We're writing off a lot of time. And actually, even though it's a really, really busy department, profitability is terrible. So we used to always reward lawyers by how much they brought into the business. So that corporate team, they made millions last year. But if profitability is tiny, then, sorry, it doesn't matter if you did a multi-million pound deal last year. It
Yep.
still didn't actually make any money for the firm, compared to employment over there that are doing thousands of smaller deals, but are really, really profitable because they've streamlined everything. So that's why I say to focus on that. It's more your drivers, I think. Having a senior sponsor within the department is game changing, so having someone that encourages the use of automation and legal technology in the team, rather than it being the juniors or the knowledge lawyers doing something and then almost having to convince them, just means that, if they stand up and they go, I've seen this, I've tried this, I've used it, this is something we're all going to get behind. And if anyone can help, you'll be, if they name check juniors that have helped, then other juniors want to get involved and roll in. So senior sponsor, like with any change, management, game changing. And the worst projects I've worked on, people always like to know the horror stories rather than the success stories. The worst projects I've worked on is where we've had terrible senior sponsors who haven't really believed in it. They've just been put on it by the law
Yep.
firm. They've gone, oh, you go and manage that. And actually they've just got in the way, questioned everything, not really believed in it. And just, yeah, it's been painful.
Yeah, entrepreneurship
I have
sure
battle
is.
scars from those kind of ones.
I'm sure. I mean, we brushed over this, so I want to go into a little bit more detail because you were one of the very first legal engineers. But again, we're in an evolving world. Would you mind explaining very simply what a legal engineer is and what does legal engineering involve?
Yeah, sure. So it was a way to try and explain what we were trying to do, and that was um, looking at the process, the as is process, if you like, of what the lawyers were doing when they were delivering the service, and by using people, process, and technology, re-engineering it to make it more streamlined. Legal engineering is not just about the innovation and trying brand new stuff. A lot of the books I read and a lot of things I like are about, marginal gains and continuous improvement. So, a little bit here, a little bit there. So that was what it started off because it was Richard Susskind in one of his books said something like, in the future, there will be this thing, there will be a job title called legal knowledge engineers. So it was Orlando Canetta that I worked with at Pinson's suggested that we use that when we were hiring our first legal knowledge engineers, so Pavin Sharma and Saran Kaur, who are now, legal engineer superstars at Chanel and HSBC. And then when I set up BamLegal, I dropped the knowledge bit because it wasn't just about the content. It was very much about the resource and the technology and the process as well. So that's why I dropped it and put that in. And then when we set up, when Wavelength was founded, and I became a non-exec and an investor in that, that was the first ever legal engineering firm, if you liked. And there was a lot of talk then about kind of, defining it and where it came from. But I think at its core, it's looking at its service redesign, if you like, using people, process, and tech.
Oh, great way. Love how you positioned that. And I guess looking forwards then. And by the way, I love how you talked about marginal gains. I'm a big fan of James Clear. I always reference him in most of my talks and the impact of small habits and, replacing, goals with systems and 1% compounds. You make you 37% more efficient over a year if you just make those marginal gains. But looking at the future of legal engineering, do you think legal engineering will become a standard career path in law firms, or will it still remain niche expertise?
I think it's actually already disappearing as a job title. I think it's becoming more, as it's grown, there's people that look more at each aspect of it. So you've now got people that are more legal technologists,
Yep.
and then maybe people that are more about process mapping, and then someone else that maybe focuses on billing, even because that came into it too. So I actually think legal engineering as a job title probably will go out of favor, and also because, as I said, we kind of made it up, and we've definitely been challenged by lots of engineers going, "You're not doing engineering." And it's like, okay, fine, yeah, no, we're not really. Um, yeah, and I think with tools getting easier and easier to use, I firmly believe that we also need to let the lawyers now do more themselves with the software tools. You couldn't really do that 10 years ago because, as much as the vendors said the lawyers could learn how to use the tools, it wasn't that easy and they didn't have time. Whereas nowadays, because you can use almost, plain natural language to say, I want to build a bot that does this, it's that
Yeah.
easy nowadays to build. And some of the tools, like with document automation, there's a tool now where it's truly no code, in that you write all the questions in plain English and it does the automation, builds the automation for you. So yeah, I think we'll lose the job role legal engineer. The lawyers will start doing more themselves, but as I said, the lawyers' day and what they do will start to change in itself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess sticking with the future then, what's the future look like for BamLegal? Do you have any exciting plans for the rest of this year, the coming years? Tell us.
This year seems to be a lot about, and I feel really lucky that I am the person that people approach when they're wanting to do new things. So this year is a lot about trying to, I like to be the first to do something. So, I have ideas and I go to vendors and I go, can you do this? And they go, oh, well, not quite, but what might that look like? And I was like, well, I think if you could do this, all these law firms want it and would want to buy it. So this year I'm having a lot of fun doing experiments and working with people on that. Long term, I don't want to grow and scale the business so that it becomes like a outsourced automation factory, that kind of thing. But I think I would like to grow and have more. At the moment, I'm the only employee of BamLegal,
Yeah.
and I use trusted contacts that are experts in their specific areas to go and help our clients when our clients come with the use case. So I kind of assemble the crack team, if you like. I think I'd just like to grow that a little bit so that we could just service more of the clients that are coming our way. So if there's any really good legal technologists, project managers, process mappers out there, feel free to get in touch.
Absolutely. And I guess before we wrap up, what would be one piece of advice you can offer aspiring lawyers interested in legal tech?
Just play. So don't try and go, well, no, don't let me put you off. Do as many training courses as you like, but try and just play, speeding up things that you do in your everyday life. So whenever you're doing something and you're thinking there must be a faster way to do this, it can be how you turn your lecture notes into exam revision notes, whatever it may be. It could be, how do I work out what's in my fridge to turn into dinner tonight? Just play and play with tools. Podcasts are great. Listen to podcasts, network. But yeah, it's that curiosity. It's just not, it's kind of, there's different type of people in the world. There's some that will just wait to see what happens to them. And there's some that will go and shape their own future. And it's that curiosity of, what can I do for myself? And for me, that's fun. And I would just say, have fun and play.
Yeah, definitely the entrepreneur coming out in you there for sure, Catherine. I always say if it's meant
It's maybe
to be
a bit reckless. I don't know.
I advocate for that. I'm a huge fan of that, and always say if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Look, this has been fantastic, Catherine. Really enjoyed having you today. If our listeners want to follow you or learn more about your career, or indeed BamLegal, where can they go to find out more? Feel free to share any websites or any social media handles. We'll also share them in this episode for you too.
Thank you. LinkedIn's the main space I hang out. I'm also on Instagram as @BamLegal.
There we have it. So thank you so much once again, Catherine. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Legally Speaking podcast, sponsored by Clio. Wishing you lots of continued success with your entrepreneurial pursuits and indeed BamLegal. But for now, from all of us, over and out.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.